Hi guys, this is going to be my first YouTube video, hopefully one of many, and what I feel like is the beginning of something great. So my name is Rodrigo. That's how you would say it in Portuguese, but here in the West I go by Rodrigo. I'm gonna take off this hood. It's not too cold here. I came to a local park. Something came over me and I decided to do what I typically do, which is sit down and do nothing on my day off, but to do it somewhere different and to bring a tripod with me and record this video on my iPhone. Now the title of the video is probably going to be something like the consequences of globalism, or perhaps the effect of globalism on young men, or the effect of globalism on the human, particularly the male psyche, or even the consequences of globalism on humanity. So I've had these ideas brewing in my head for a couple years now. I'm 21 years old. I turned 21 this year. And yeah, let's get straight to it. Let's talk about who I am and why that might be interesting to whoever's viewing this video, because I have the belief that I'm a completely new, almost subspecies of human. I am the true globalistic, nomadic person. I was born to two Brazilian parents in Texas, and Texas is where I currently reside. After many years, I found my way back here, and that might be interesting to you, why I decided to come back. But from age 0 to 1, I finally got my passport at the age of 1, and my father went ahead and got transferred in his job to go work in China. So over in Beijing. Stayed in Beijing from age 1 to 7, which most psychologists would call the formative years. I forget the name of the psychologist. Look, man, I studied it, okay? And some would even argue that it's more like 1 to 4. Well, both of those were spent in Beijing, in China, within a British school. And after age 7, we moved to Brazil, where I learned to speak Portuguese. And by the way, Mandarin was basically my first language because I had Chinese nannies, but I did forget it because we had to move to Brazil and I picked up an entirely new language like that. So we're living in Brazil from age 7 to 12, so that's 5 years. And then went ahead and lost everything while living in Brazil. So we kind of lost that upper class lifestyle, and we were apartment rich. We had a nice apartment, but we just couldn't sell it, and we were kind of fucked. Until my dad got a job offer to go work in Indonesia. Now you're thinking, holy shit, Indonesia? What are you even talking about? But yeah, I lived in Indonesia for 4 years. I turned 13 in Indonesia, and this is a common theme. I'll move to, well, we would have moved, or even I would have moved to a country just a couple days or a week or something right before my birthday, and it'd be a very lonely birthday, and that kind of set the stage for what moving did to my mind at a subconscious level. Something I never really recognized, but that my siblings most definitely felt much more than I did. For me, I think it was a benefit, net positive, as I'm making this video right here, but I do not think that this is a lifestyle, that these are lifestyle choices suitable for most people. Anyway, 4 years in Indonesia, followed by another move to Vietnam. I stayed in Vietnam for about 1 year and 8 months, and then I moved to Wisconsin, graduated high school over there. Got a degenerate over here. Oh well. Very common. Very, very, very common. Anywho, spent a good time in Wisconsin. Won't get too much into that. Had some major family issues, then some major health issues. Back to Vietnam after a couple years, and I went Wisconsin to New Mexico, to the New Mexico, Colorado area, and that's when I moved back to Vietnam, got my shit together, and now I'm back here in Texas. So that's just a little bit of context, okay? Now, let's get into why it was good for me and why it was bad for my siblings. So whenever I tell people, because they ask me where I'm from, or oh, you from Texas, or you from the city that I'm in, I'm not really going to get into that right now. I don't see a point in that. But when I say no and they ask me where I'm from, I kind of, like, it's an unskippable cutscene for me at this point. It's been my whole life, and I know that's annoying to say, and I recognize that in its entirety. But suffice to say, it's a conversation that I typically like to dodge around, and I give them a bit of vague gray area answers for the following reasons. So I say, no, I'm not from here. Okay, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Brazil. Oh, were you born in Brazil? Well, I was born in Texas, actually. And they're like, whoa. So how was it moving from Brazil to Texas? And I was like, well, actually, I was only in Brazil for 5 years. I was in all these other places. And this is if I don't give a vague answer, right? So then I'm talking about myself for a good 5 minutes. I've shortened it down to about 45 seconds, I feel like. I've gotten really good at that. And what always comes back to me in the form of a response from whoever I'm speaking to is, oh, wow, yeah, I never even left the country, or yeah, I've never even been on a plane, or oh, I've only been to this place or that place. And it's always people trying to measure up against me, and I don't see the fucking point. Everyone wants to be well traveled, and that's really cool, but everyone feels so lesser, and I don't really like that. And that's when I always tell them, like, look, relax, okay? Like, it's not like I'm not all that because of this. I think it's actually better that you went through your experience of growing up in one place, of having friends that you grew up with your whole life, a family that you never had to detach from. I'm talking extended family. And of course, everything comes in a bundle package, right? Maybe your uncle's a pedophile. I don't know. Like, sorry to be weird about it, but you know what I'm saying, right? And maybe the friends you grew up with became limiting factors throughout your life, right? And that's a very possible thing. And state programming is a very, very, very real thing, and programming in general. And that's something I haven't really fallen as much victim to, perhaps through movies and Hollywood. Definitely, I think that all of us in the world have fallen victim to that collective set of, not collective set, that collective unconscious, that those values that you kind of get in movies. Like, don't judge and this and that, right? Just basic things like that. But yeah, that conversation always goes the same. And it's why I do a little bit of, let's just say, social engineering to make sure it doesn't happen. Look at my accent, look at the way I talk. I can blend in very seamlessly with most typical Americans. I know the slang, I know the lingo. Yeah, I'm talking like not so typical American right now, but we're not in that context of, I'm working my little slave job and I'm talking to someone who's also working a slave job. Like, no, I'm gonna mimic to an extent their cultural programming so that they don't, get any kind of red flags that I'm some foreigner. So that's exactly what we're here to talk about today. The consequences of globalism. Everyone, Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson, all these speakers right now, even more niche ones, they'll talk about globalization, of the impact of immigration, of a cultural dissolution by way of non-assimilation and cultural degrading, and what it means to have a cohesive nation and culture and people. And I think this is something that cannot be understated. It's a beautiful thing to have a people, to have a culture, and that's something that I'm trying to find here in America. So, like I said, I was born to 2 Brazilian parents, but my first 7 years of conscious life, of life in general, my first, I suppose, 2 years of conscious life were spent in China. So I did not know how to speak Portuguese. I did not have the typical Portuguese or Brazilian environment. So when we arrived in Brazil, I was treated like a foreigner in my own country. You know, they called me a gringo. Gringo means foreigner, obviously, right? And I didn't know the language. And at the age of 7 and 8, and like I said, the theme, I had just turned 8 as soon as we arrived, without any of my friends, of course, which for a child, I suppose, would be quite damaging. I'm now trying to reevaluate all these things. But to be called a foreigner in your own country after leaving a country where you were a true foreigner, you know, everyone around you is Asian, everyone around you looks at you and it's like, oh wow, that's the American kid, right? Because I would say I'm from Texas. I would really wear that look. And this is a hoodie I made, by the way. So yeah, there's my background. I've designed graphics and clothing for many years. So more of a creative thinker type. Maybe that's cope, maybe I'm just retarded, but I did take my IQ, I have a 124, so I am not retarded at least. But anywho, that idea when my father told me we're moving to Brazil, and I remember it now, I forgot it. It was so exciting. Like, oh wow, this is the place where I'm really from, you know, I don't even know the language, I don't know this, you know, we watched the movie Rio, and I was so excited. And I arrived there and I was an alien. And guys, this is my country. This is my like genetic, like I say this because, you know, veins within the blood. This is my genetics. Eu sou brasileiro, you know? And if you're a Brazilian watching that, you'll see that that accent's perfect, okay? I'm not a faker. And to be treated like a foreigner like that was just so disconcerting. And I worked really hard to blend in, and to a degree I did. I was one of the best football players in my school, and I did have a stunted puberty. Everyone there gets puberty at like 12 to 13. They're not as zoid out as here in America, and I suppose I was a little bit, and that kind of destroyed my social circle toward the end of my time in Brazil, and we moved to Indonesia. Now guys, this is where the consequences of true globalization start to manifest, because this is my genetic lineage. Being in Brazil, I had Brazilian parents who taught me Brazilian customs and how to act as a Brazilian, and I learned how to speak Portuguese by speaking it within my own home, okay? So, and I already had a level of ostracization, of otherness compared to my peers that was palpable. Now, Indonesia is an 87% Muslim country. Imagine me going there. Like, it was not natural for me to be there. It simply was not. And it's not like I went to Jakarta or Bali or this or that where all the other white people go. No, we were on a remote island called Batam Riau Islands, okay? It's an hour off the coast of Singapore. And I was basically the only actual white kid on the whole island. A couple years in, some kid named Jacody came in. He was an Australian. But that was only towards the last couple years. So I was the white kid on the island. And that is fucking weird to go through. Okay, now, just like I was called gringo, which is, you know, basically a slur. I don't care about slurs, I think they're hilarious. But in Indonesia, I was really called one, and it's called bule, okay? It's called bule, it means foreigner. And people would talk in my face in Indonesian, in Bahasa Indonesia. And then pa 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 pa, bule pa 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 pa. Alright guys, data ran out on the phone. I'm gonna have to keep this really brief. But I'm gonna go ahead and continue this video on my MacBook at home or something, whenever this runs out. But essentially, globalization made it so that I'm an alien wherever I go. I'll never have a home. I'll never have roots within any society. I can never meet someone else in the world and truly relate to their experience ever. And I know this got really intense, but I've spent the past 30 minutes cleaving the fucking data so that I can do this, and it really pissed me off. So I was going to ease into that idea, but essentially, for me personally, it became a superpower. A superpower that I'm trying to leverage with this YouTube channel and with my life in general. But I'm going to leverage it so that the world can become better, and so that less kids have to go through what my siblings, I should say, went through with the average mindset, and so that they don't have to be traumatized by that. Because for me, I'm fine. I'm completely fine. But I'm an anecdote. You know, people might watch this video and be like, wow, look, globalization's so bad. Look how culturally aware he is. Look at how articulate he is. Look how well he's able to assimilate anywhere. You really think that people are willing to assimilate the same way I am? Just think that over. You really think that people come to America like I do, and honest to God, they want to become one of you, like I am trying to find a home? Or do you think they view you as idiots, to be subjugated and to be taken advantage of? And then there's so much that comes from that, and I'll get into it with more videos, but yeah, that is the essence of what I'm saying. Okay, there's serious consequences to this shit, and people don't really like to think about it, but I'm an open book, and that's what I'm going to discuss on my channel. Thank you, and God bless you all.